everybody, and welcome back to Epic Aotearoa Create a Better Future podcast, and in particular, this special series, In the Service of Others, Who Dares Wins. We have the privilege today. My co-founding partner, Brian Osman, isn't able to join us today, so you've just got myself. But our special guest today is a former member of the New Zealand Special Air Service by the name of Mr. Bro Kumeroa. I love his title that he asked for me to refer to him as just another bro. He's a loving husband and family man and father. And he's got an incredible story, one of not only the journey that he's taken, but also what he's doing now, what he's been able to achieve. And he's been really open and allowed us some of his time today to speak on some topics which will hopefully help more of our either current serving members, whether they be in the SAS or not, or whether they be civilians who are just keen and interested to learn from some of the lessons of people like Chris that they've experienced over the course of their time on this earth today. So without further ado, Chris, welcome, brother. Thank you for being here today.
Tēnā koe, Joe. Kei te mihi kia koe e rangatira. Kei te mihi kia koutou nei. Yeah, thanks for having us on, Joe. Man, you're really natural at this.
I'm good at faking it, bro. I'm good at faking it. No, thank you for that, bro. And
reminds me of a guy that you've interviewed before, known as, or otherwise known as Neil, aka Real Deal Waka.
Yeah, now that guy, yeah, he's speaking of a natural. He had very kind words to say about you, but I laughed at the banter. He also had some cheeky stuff as well, which was done more so off air.
Well, I guess I owe him $100 in.
Nah, he's all right. He doesn't need $100. But brother, great to have you on. And like any story, or not so much story, but experiences, and yeah, I guess stories as well that people have. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. The end is far from near for yourself. But in terms of the beginning and the middle and all the other stuff in between, I'd love it if you wouldn't mind. So I only just touched on briefly about your time in the New Zealand Special Air Service, and we've been receiving a lot of feedback. People have been genuinely interested, particularly from a New Zealand perspective, of what it was like, what your journey has been like, and what you've been able to achieve post that, because that's really impressive as well. And I've seen some of the photos and stuff that you've been kind enough to send through. So I was wondering if you wouldn't mind, Chris, just maybe giving us a bit of a backdrop, some of the information that you've shared. So born and raised in Whanganui, and if you could go from there in terms of your upbringing, the lifestyle, and what led you to or drove you to wanting to join the New Zealand Special Air Service.
Yeah, I guess the long and short of it is I'm proudly born and raised from Whanganui. I descend from a small place called Parikino, Pungarihu Koroneti Mataiwi, right up and down the Whanganui River, and much like the rest of us river lot, we a bit of a law unto ourselves, deeply loyal, to our people, have a strong sense of, and love to be of service, to our people, to our communities. Born and raised in a shearing shed. My father and mother were shearing contractors. My dad had 16 brothers and sisters. They all worked in the shearing sheds, majority. Yeah. And so it was a real sort of whānau-centric type setting. And there wasn't shying away from work, and nor was there any not be a part of the effort within the shearing sheds. And I guess that's paved that way from here on in.
Yeah, awesome. A lot of hard work and stuff in there by the sounds of things, and no doubt, definitely, I would imagine, no opportunities to escape, too much work to be done.
Yeah, and I guess no one left people high and dry. If a person was still there working, that was our job as a whānau to make sure that we're all working together, and that we left the job. Last job was finished, and so I guess that sort of set the tone for, when I joined the unit. Shearing's not an easy job, and I just didn't see myself in it. One, because of the smell. The two, the back-breaking effort. But what I really began to appreciate at a really young age is their sense of discipline to a craft. which wasn't the most glorious. And I'm sure there would have been other things that they would have done, but I just watched them go at it single-mindedly, and some were like really clean shearers, some fast, deliberate, and my aunties sort of just hovered around. Everybody gave each other stick. And they still found a sense of whanaungatanga family.
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of boded really well when I left there to join the organisation or the military.
Awesome. And so was that part of, so listening to that, I can relate to a lot of what you're mentioning there with family members of mine and uncles heavily involved in sharing and suffered a lot of aches and pains and injuries and stuff as they got older through that nature of the backbreaking work and stuff involved. Was that part of, as you observed that, was there a sense in you that there was something more that you wanted to do? Because you sounded like you sort of touched on it. It's hard work. It's there. You can see it, and they no doubt did other things. But did that leave in you a bit of a sense that there's more out there for me to do?
Yeah, my father was an ex-Malayan vet himself, right? So he went in 61 to 63 with all his other uncles.
Right.
And so I saw that camaraderie piece happen quite often when they were don their gear for, the Anzac Day. And I just watched that really close-knit family beyond a normal family
Yeah.
that I thought was rather unique and was surrounded by grandparents too that had gone to either World War One or World War Two, and I just watched them in awe, not only being Māori, speaking Māori, but just having a really strong sense of duty and commitment, to their communities. And I thought there was just a really wonderful type of leadership that, I thought to myself, man, that would be really cool to try and emulate in some shape or form. And my father used to have this photo sitting we used to come home from school, and it was him at, must have been a flag post in Malaysia, sitting outside, whatever the location was.
Yeah.
And it was just that constant reminder of a sense of duty to his nation through the military. But I just watched them all my life having a really strong sense of purpose to making sure that they looked after the people that are around them, whether it's through sharing, whether it was killing mutton, getting eels, hunting, gathering, and they, they never just got it for themselves. They got it for everyone that might have been vulnerable, that the older generation they had a sense of duty to give back to them. And so, I guess for me, there was a sort of slight attraction. And I guess the tipping point is towards the end of my schooling days, there was probably a range of things that we could do. One was sharing, which was just low on the radar.
Yeah.
One was potentially trying to play rugby, and then the other one was joining the army. And my uncle, Gary Ratner, who's since passed away, had just returned from Singapore, but he was with the unit. And I just watched him, just the way he interacted with people, the way he gave up his time, the way he gave up his time for his people around. I just thought it was and so it was quite intriguing. So I sat down with him and had a range of questions as you do as a young 17-year-old. And I guess that was sort of the tipping point.
Wow.
And he basically said to me, "You won't be the only river kid that'll go through there if you make it. There's many of us that go through." Which was the case.
Yeah,
We ended up joining. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, man. And can I ask, just before I come back to that, because 17 is when you joined, and we'll come back to that, was when you joined the army, at 17?
That's right, yeah.
What were you like as a student at school, Chris? Were you, like, academic-wise, was it something that you really enjoyed, all of that stuff, or?
Dialing back a few years, I grew up with Gluia.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
I couldn't hear properly. So I'd start off my early schooling days at the front of the class because I actually
Couldn't hear properly.
And I never had grammar speak in those days, so I used to have constant earaches, headaches. And so I missed
learning relatively early and learned most stuff and probably blood most of the time through my schooling days, but did enough to get through. And I think because the glue hadn't been dealt with at a really younger age, I found it really difficult to apply myself. Although I did have an enjoyment around maths, that seemed to be something that I really enjoyed.
Nice.
And then sort of sport seemed to be my outlet. I was never really any good at rugby at a younger age group, but sort of grew into it as I got to college.
Yeah.
Was highly sort of busy and aggressive, and then got pulled into the first 15 at fourth form.
Oh wow!
And then got smacked around. I thought, holy crap, this is what this is all about. This is like a whole new level. I thought I was ready, but I actually wasn't mentally and physically.
Yeah.
And we ended up playing the game and led a whakaitu with all my church cousins, all the radio cousins, and they were built like men and they were strong as men too at a really young age because they'd been bull riding, all of that stuff, and man, they just tuned us up. So it was a real enlightening sort of moment that, be careful what you wish for. But the sort of years to come, I become really, I ended up playing rugby league for this premier team at the age of 16. So they taught me these sort of wonderful skill sets. One, to evade big fellas that can hit hard, and they had a real commitment to look after the young fellas, which I really enjoyed. And said, just be yourself and do the things you're really good at. Our job is to keep all the ball heads away. And so rugby was our little thing. Made rep teams and whatnot, and thought, maybe I can make a life of this.
Awesome.
But Army ended up calling us instead.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like how the stuff that you've touched on, and it sounds like, because this will more than likely come up with your time in the unit, and I love the information that you've sent through to me so far, and just the way that you're speaking about the backstory, the environment that you saw, the family members, nobody was left behind. If there was something there to do, everybody chipped in. What you noticed and observed of your family members and the camaraderie and the loyalty and the just something about that was tangible. You could feel it, you could see it, even though you might not have been able to articulate it at the time. And all these little things leading up to obviously rugby and participating in that and being careful what you wish for. But those environments, I would imagine you would have seen aspects as well, which have just sort of helped shape, I guess, this next little piece, which I'd really love and interested to speak about. So 17, at the time, was that the minimum age that you needed to be as a minimum, or could you join at 16 or?
At the time, right? I can't remember whether I applied or not. I might have just missed the intake date, and I guess you had to have an IQ more than a spud, so that would have been me out anyway. So I think it was 17 and a half.
Right, yeah.
And the old man said, you might as well throw your papers in, go and explore the world a little bit. And because I was really fortunate to see Uncle Gary, seen all his photos from Singapore, some of the cool photos that he was involved with the team.
Yeah.
He said, if you want to explore the world, play rugby and do kapaka, go and join the army. He's like, yeah, that's me.
Awesome.
So and you were surrounded by uncles or granduncles that had been involved, and they're just really wonderful, caring community men. And I guess that's something that I sort of saw myself moving towards. Yeah, so 17 and a half was when I joined.
Yeah.
And
you joined. Oh, yeah. So, what did you join as, infantry or?
So it was a gunner,
right?
And typical of not listening properly. When they said gunner, I thought, jimpy and all of those sorts of things. Like those big things around. But when I showed up, it was actually those big 105 howitzers and light guns. It's like, not quite what I asked for. But and then I tried to get a corps change, to infantry because I wanted to sharpen my skills to to go and do selection at some stage.
Yeah.
But I ended up making some really fantastic mates, the likes of Evan Kariko, John Makakia, many great guys who are still serving today. Ended up doing a year and a bit with them.
Awesome.
161 battery, yeah.
And then, so a year and a bit with them before you then did selection at 19, right?
Yeah, we went in for a bit. We did, the basic gunnery training.
Yeah.
And then I think it was about 6 months. So we're there till Christmas '89.
Right. Yeah.
And then we ended up at Papakura, and I ended up seeing, these guys running around. They were fit, strong,
Yeah.
just had a certain way about them, a certain aura about them. And I found it really intriguing. And I was going, oh, the crap, who's this lot? Hanging a little finger, and they're all special. Special in the way that they just did things that no one, very few others did. But so I ended up asking a few questions and bumped into a few cousins, and I think there was 5 of them from the river that were already serving.
Wow, in the unit at the time.
Yeah, so
Wow.
Maddie, Shane, Range, Marshy.
Wow.
There's a range of guys that were from home.
Yep.
Familiar names and whatnot, and I guess it's the same as Ngāpuhi and Ngāti Parau. There was a strong sense of those tribal elements with personnel from those regions. So I ended up talking to one of them. Long story short, Range's biological dad was a close family member of ours, and I had a photo of him in our photo collection.
Yeah.
And I ended up showing him. I said, "Oh, your family's really close to us." He goes, "Oh, are they?" And so I showed him the photo and went, "Oh, wow." And sort of a relationship started to form. So ask him questions and whatnot, and he helped us, start to think about and consider doing selection.
Yeah.
I tried to apply when I was 18, but they told me to piss off. So, the ink's still drying on your pass. I got a little bit peed off with it, to be fair. I just didn't like to be told, no, you can't do something. But the commanding officer at the time for 161 said, no, we're not going to put your name in. We're not going to allow you to apply. You just need more soldiering skills.
Yeah.
And in a way, I sort of thought, well, have you guys applied and you're being turned down, or you just don't want people like us to move away? But I think it was a blessing in disguise, where they wanted you to get some more life skills, to really think about and can have a really considered approach to joining. And I myself into, to be honest. But
there wouldn't have been a lot of it. Oh, sorry, go.
Because the success rate was relatively low. I was an unknown. But I guess what it did is it actually really refined my thinking around the approach. And it made me go away and actually work on me. And I guess there was some sort of base skills that I had, but I actually needed to get fitter. I needed to get stronger. I needed to have some clarity about whether I really wanted to do it or not.
Yeah.
Strong desire just to get amongst it. So I trained, pretty religiously. 3 times a day. And from 4 o'clock in the morning through to 6, doing step ups in my room.
Yeah. Awesome.
As you do. Going to PT with everybody else, and I remember my goal being try and beat everyone and everything. Because you're sort of building up, right? And everyone's sort of starting to see, you at the back of the running pack, creep your way through the middle, and start to push towards it. And everyone's going, what the hell is this guy doing? And then, you wouldn't go to lunch because you're going to do an RFL, or you went to dinner. And then disappear for the rest of the night. It was like, where's he at? But in the background, it was quietly training, and I just didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah, right.
That fear of ridicule. What do you think?
Yeah.
stuff that generally follows, something like that. Some are really supportive, but generally speaking, because you're an unknown, you were young. It's like
Yeah.
the average age was 25 to 28, right? And
Mm,
no one expected 19-year-olds to put their hand up and go do stuff like that.
yeah. And your training during that time, that's interesting and really cool hearing that as well. A couple of questions. One, I would imagine that there wasn't a lot of information other than conversations that you were lucky enough to have with people like Ranj and that, and some family members around. So it's interesting to hear you mention the step ups and stuff. How did you what did you focus on with your training? Did you identify in yourself that you needed to get stronger in these things because you felt that you weren't as capable in them yet, or was it just a case of we're going to be needing to carry our packs around for long periods of time, so I better start getting used to it? And the second part of this is when people, I imagine people eventually found out, oh, Chris is getting ready to go on selection, or he's going on selection. Did you encounter any, you mentioned some were supportive, did you encounter any Muppets, I guess you'd call them, that were like, what are you thinking? Did you encounter any of those people?
I think everyone sort of typically does.
Yeah.
I just looked at my training in a real sort of holistic form. Like I said, I'd come from the sharing set, so nothing was off the table. You grind out some really challenging days. Start at 5 in the morning or even earlier. You didn't finish till like 7 o'clock at night, and then your parents would go on the drinks for a few hours, and as a young kid you're left inside the pub to look after yourself and learn how to play snooker, right, or pool. Eat about crunchy bars, 7 packs of chips, and about 4 litres of raspberry lemonade. So you become quite what's the word? Occupy your time pretty well. Become inventive.
Self-sufficient. Yeah, and inventive.
So I just learned all of that stuff in the sharing set, and I go back to it all the time. I said, if there was a job to be done, if you weren't allowed to show, it boded well in the training, and I've got lots of tips from Darren. Make sure you do lots of walking with packs. Don't substitute that. Learn how to map read. Get into the wild, and just clock some hours up. So that's what I did.
Awesome.
But I didn't get back home till sometimes 11 or 1 o'clock in the morning from pack marching.
Right.
And then Friday night, as soon as finished work, I'd have a feed, throw my gear on, and head up to the Hanuas or other parts of the country, and just spend days up there, map reading, and just getting some miles in my legs. So the determination thing or work ethic wasn't an issue. Just my lack of soldier skills at 19 years old, right? Yes. You just don't have nothing. But excuse. And then you just sort of go at it constantly. Get stronger, get fitter, get faster. Find ways to put more pressure on yourself mentally and physically. So when the thing did come along, at least you had some sort of baptism of fire before you even actually got there. So I guess that was the approach.
Yeah, awesome. And what about so you did mention that there were people and stuff there. So how many on your selection, Chris? Do you remember roughly casting your mind back? So you did selection in 1990?
1990, yeah. And that was in May, I think. So I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And the likes of Vern were there, and a few others. There must have been at least 40 odd.
Yeah.
Including a guy called Scrim from the Navy, and it was really good to have him. One pronouncer that obviously the GS found making that a joke between themselves, and then just had a whole bunch of guys, and I just kept my head down.
How many completed your one? Oh, sorry, go. You remember?
Yeah, I think there was about I think there was about 12, and I think only 8.
Yep.
I think 12 finished and only 8 sort of got through.
Yeah.
It was quite a mixed bag too. And I remember showing up there, and a few battalion guys looked at me and go, "Mate, you're still in nappies. What are you doing here?" I was like, "Yeah, this is not a baby assassin's training school. What are you?" And I was, and I guess the battalion boys were quite like that. It was sort of a real subtle bullying, and
Yeah.
it was something that I really despised, and I don't know, it really annoyed me at the time. And I remember thinking to myself, "Don't worry about me, buddy. You just worry about yourself."
Awesome.
I was always thinking about how to not allow white noise to distract, what I'm trying to achieve here.
Yep.
And I was thinking to myself, well, we'll see how far you get. Just using that as a bit of fuel, and that's what you need during selection and cycle ride is something to sort of hang your hat on and go, right, I'm going to prove you wrong, or whatever those motivations are.
Yep.
Because you need to look for those subtle things to keep you going.
Definitely.
I didn't typically find the selection course that hard. I was demanding on my body, but in my mind, I knew that there was always going to be an end, and in my mind that and I didn't use the shearing sheds as the backdrop to keep going,
Yeah.
but I guess that was the foundation on which that continuance to push through was built on.
Yeah.
And typically too, where you grow up in the shearing shed, you try and support your fellow comrades to keep at it, and the realization at the end of that you'll get a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah.
But just for whatever reason, some people weren't ready at the time, or they just didn't want it bad enough to hang in the scrap. It's that constant inward challenge to yourself. Can I continue to do this? And I guess over time with a unit, you just find that boundaries are only limitations within your own mind, not with anything else.
Man, I like
And
that.
I guess that's what I really learned was when I got there is there were like-minded folk like me, and it was okay to be like that, and it was okay to think and behave like that.
Yeah.
And I just found this new world and that were highly driven, and the environment was bloody, was none other than I've experienced anywhere else other than from home. Being around family members, so it was something I really enjoyed as a youngster.
Beautiful, man. That's awesome. And would you have been? You must have been, if not the youngest, then one of the youngest to go through, at least at that time, that you would be aware of. Is that right, Chris?
I think so. I think King Iaka was I think he went to Vietnam, but a bit of a legend. All of those Vietnam guys were, the ones that I had, short, sharp experiences with through my limited time. They were just unique in their own sort of way. And Bill Lillycrap was there, and I just found him really intriguing guy to deal with. He'd obviously seen some stuff and experienced some stuff, and
I bet.
I just watched the senior unit guys hover around him and cherish on. But it wasn't until later on when I got in, the types of commitment, like many others who've gone through, 20 plus years, their really dogged determination to maintain the standards.
Yeah.
Maintain, the value sets that the unit is built upon.
Yeah.
And it's that, you have a sense of duty now, is that when you step through that door, that you uphold those values and you drive them every day of your life with people around you. And that's what I really, one of the many things I loved about the organisation is that every time you put on the gear is that you are a representation of that long tail in history of an organisation that goes above and beyond. And
True.
you know, it was really special place to be.
Beautiful, absolutely. And what was selection like for you? Because it's interesting that it wasn't particularly, and I could imagine having the growing up in the shearing sheds and having that background. It's a hearty lifestyle, and it sets a very, very strong foundation. I notice anyway from people that have that background and go on selection. But was there anything that you found that stuck out for you that was particularly challenging, or maybe just funny? Like, were there some funny stuff that happened on your selection?
Oh, there's always, you know, the likes of Spence. I don't know if you ever met him, Brosto. They were senior guys there at the time, and
Yeah,
just really, really funny. Um, just funny human beings. Just the way in which they conducted selection course in a way where there was this sort of mutual banter between them, but also making sure that nothing was going to slip through the net. The sort of no dickheads policy, and you could
yeah,
see
yeah.
that play out when they orchestrated the course, right? And so it's those sort of characters that make the organisation, what it is. It's more than just sort of discipline and being really dogmatic around a particular mission or an objective, but it is really humorous to them as well. Real quick-witted, mind, just can't let your guard down sort of approach. And that played out on selection course. I remember, the old man was always, and many of our parents were sort of really quite humble sort of achievers in the background that didn't ask for any notoriety. They were just doers. And I remember really applying myself to that sort of style in the selection, not to be seen, not to be heard. The grey man, the sort of approach, because you had these people that would, they would ordinarily just draw attention. I was like, okay, bro, thank you, because now you're going to be the saving grace for me. And I remember this guy, Walsh, X1 Battalion, I think,
Right.
really burly Pākehā boy, and really strong. He had all the attributes, but he just had a big mouth, and he was subtly assertive in the things that he did, and I don't know, he just drew the DS's attention all the time. And I remember being one of those nights where you've got it's either the Morse code night
Oh, yeah.
or the hemoglobin night, where you learn about blood cells.
Yeah.
Where they either crank the heat up so you try and go to sleep, or they
Keep you up. Yeah.
or turn the heat down, so you're really cold. All of those sorts of funs. And I remember, because you had to write 1,000 words about yourself and why you wanted to be in the unit.
Yep.
Anyway, so we're going through that, and the psych was in there along with a couple other DS, right? And that sort of real eagle-eyed, watching every sort of move and the body language and all that sort of stuff. I remember at the end, he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm going to draw a picture because that tells 1,000 words." And it was like,
He said that out loud.
he said it out loud, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And it's
He'd
like,
be like, thank you, brother.
you can see all of us, they were trying to sort of subtly sort of move away, arms reach from, because not to get misconstrued whether it was you that said it or him. Yeah, it was like, mate, thank you. There was all those sorts of characters, and although at the time was really hilarious, it was one of those things, I guess, maybe didn't realise too much later.
Yeah.
Those are the things that, the unit didn't like about people.
Yeah.
They just want them to have a particular style and mannerisms that, just don't draw attention to themselves. I guess that was not so much a fail, but that was something that obviously his name. But it was all those sorts of nuances, course, that's sort of made you giggle and chuckle about life.
Definitely. Yeah, awesome. And how about the cycle for you, Chris? So transitioning, getting through that around about 40, about 12 finished, 8 selected for further training. Was that pretty much your cycle as well? Was your cycle those 8, or was there the second selection that might have happened later that year And was it a combined from the two selections? And what was that cycle like for you? That process?
Yeah, it was combined selections. So I think there was a number. I think it was about 18 in total from both selections that ended up on the cycle itself. And then some real characters there, right? Some older soldiers who I thought to myself, I've got a whole heap of deficiencies here in my soldiering skills. Who are the guys from one battalion? Who am I going to lean on to help me with these soldier skills? And there were plenty. So I was really lucky that they were there. And some of the older guys were like 38. There was 2 of them that were at that older age bracket.
Wow.
But they brought a range of other disciplines that none of us had. And I guess that's the beauty about the cycle and the unit, right? They're all shapes and sizes from differing backgrounds. Some are academically bright, some are intuitively bright. So they've all got the wonderful traits to bring to the organisation, that diversity of thinking, that diversity of behaviour, the diversity of all of those elements were part of that cycle. But I remember Hemi Williams, and may he rest in peace, showed up that evening before the cycle started. And it was till 2nd of January. And there was one guy that wasn't there, goes by the name of Snaggle, and he was a day late. And so anyway, Hemi shows up and he says to everyone, right, tomorrow I'll be running past here at 6 o'clock. Make sure you got your PT gear on. We're just going to go for a little light PT. And anyway, so he runs off. He built like Atlas, and I was going, who the hell was that? And the little boys goes, that's the. And I was like, okay, say no more. The original sort of Dr. Death is like, okay, you don't get those names in the military for no reason, right? There's a backstory that follows.
And a
like
trail of people by the sounds of things.
Yeah. A trail of destruction.
Yeah.
Where it's broken, not only bodies and probably spirits as well. It was like, okay, so we know what we're in for. And I thought I'd done enough training, to be relatively fit.
Yeah.
But, man, he thrashed us the next morning, And it was like that for like months. And that was just sort of Hemi. And many of the other unit guys, you come here and, you be the best that you can be. So you can be the best operator for your mates. And he was like that. No one paid. It wasn't, it was just sort of that inherent leadership that the unit drives for people. And everywhere you look around, right, there's sort of leadership in different ways and different means. And he was just one of those guys, right, that just showed up and goes, my job is to help you pass. My job is to help you to be the best soldier you can be before we give you a beret. So you can be the best person you can be your mates if they lean on you to help out. You're the best, best person of yourself. Anyway, so we went and did this Red Hill, which is a 12K run with a medicine ball. It's like, who in their right mind in today's modern age runs a 12K run with a medicine ball, right? This big, huge, and you can't carry, you can't run with it. Everything about it is awkward. But I just remember looking around, and going, holy crap! This is what the organisation is about. And then we get back from this run, and we're heaving by then. And he said, right, 100 pull-ups, 200 sit-ups, and just those really rude numbers. As young fellas, when you shut up, what?
What?
Yeah, that just set the tone. He just, this is what the expectation is, boys. And so, so that was a rude but welcome tone setter.
Yep.
And then basically for 2 months, 3 months, he just took us for PT and just flogged us to death until you loved it. And then you show up to all these courses, and then they just all these standards that they sort of lay upon you to be the best person you can for the organisation.
Yeah.
So we did the MED course first, followed by the SIGS course.
Right.
I think rapid rappelling was the next one.
Yep.
And then it might have been in May, I think it might have been the patrol procedures course, combat survival, then the black roll course, and then all the other sort of micro mountaineering course, boating course. I think it was last.
Wow.
From memory, yeah. It may have changed since then, but yeah, those are all the courses we did. So we started off with 18 and it just whittled down to 12. Unfortunately, we lost it on the way. Yeah.
Lost a few on the way. Wow. And those few that you lost along the way, were they injuries or were they RTU'd for various reasons that they probably might have been told later?
I think one was an injury, so he returned back later. Scrum.
Yeah, okay.
So he you could tell he had all the attributes right. Diversity in thinking. He always challenged everything. It was good having him on our cycle because he actually drew attention away from us, but they really loved him. He was annoying to such a way where they really loved him.
That's good if you can get away with that, because there's usually annoying and you just want to get rid of them.
Well, I mean, he didn't just be annoying for the sake of annoying. He asked the questions. Why are we doing like that?
Yeah.
And you know, like, shut up. You know, you're going to get. But it's a healthy question to be. It's well, do we actually have to do, 10, 20, 30 years ago? Does it still have applicability today? In modern day warfare, does what we do get us out of the shit? Or has the enemy and their ability to be able to adapt to modern day warfare changed and an old disciplined approach and get ourselves in the poo? Or is there something else that we can think about and deliver on to look at a problem differently? And that's what the organisation is. They embraced thinking outside the box. They embraced you looking at a problem from a different angle. I guess that's part of that wider SAS component, is that you dare to dream to do it differently, and it's okay to do it differently.
Awesome, beautiful, man. Great points, and it's so good to listen to you and to see you casting your mind back and talking about these experiences and individuals and acknowledging them as well, because it's great for hopefully. So the person that you spoke about, Hemi, one that was thrashing you, he's still kicking around.
No, he passed away a few years ago, but he was still the same. Like, we ended up in Iraq together, but he was still the same. He was still built like Atlas. And I was like, how can you be 50 and built like an 18-year-old where you got 5% body fat? You eat everything that's around on the table, and you still look fantastic. But and I guess he was sort of cut from. And I talk about Bill Lillycrap and the many other guys, but they were sort of just unique men in their own right. They were really disciplined guys, and they didn't waver around any of those standards. And I guess that's why they drew the admiration from many. Yeah,
man, sounds like it. And just hearing the way you speak about them, I can get a sense myself personally of the respect and the mana that you have for them and holding them in very high regard. It's obvious as you speak about them. So thanks for that. The coming back to, so for you've gone through selection and you've gone through cycle. You're there at the end, received the beret, and you went to A Squadron.
That's right.
And what was that like for you? What was your role within the team and the patrol, and what was that experience now that you're in the unit, and how are you feeling about everything now after piecing all these things together so far?
Well, going back to the badging ceremony, it was very unceremonious.
Was it?
As you well noticed, you're standing outside the flagpole and you get this sort of brief, and then you all go up to the secure briefing room, and then they get your beret and belt thrown at you. I think Bernie Ishwood was there at the time. So congratulations. But this is only the start. I just flogged myself to death to get here, and this is, but he was right.
Yeah.
It was played down quite a bit.
Did you have
And I
families and
get,
stuff come there? Did you get to have family come there to watch you?
I spoke to my dad and my sister about it,
Yeah.
and we've been told quite often that even on the last day you might not get.
Oh, true. Yeah,
And it
yeah,
was like, man, I don't want to be that guy, right? That
yeah,
invites family members up and you actually don't get in.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
don't think any of us did, from memory. And we sort of played it down a bit. And I think, I remember saying to the old man, oh, yeah, made it in. He goes, made it into what? So I mentioned what it was. And he goes, oh, well done. We've very few people that get it there.
Mm,
But I ended up following ends that day, I think. But
awesome.
yeah, it was like the unit was really good at. Yeah, it's
Always
still a
keeping you
job
on
to
the
be
edge.
done.
Yeah, yeah.
To be done, don't celebrate today because tomorrow's going to be completely different. Just get on with it. They're really good at that. It's like walking that peak. You get to the top of that peak, and there's that dead ground.
Yeah,
And there's another little peak, and then they
yeah.
expect you to get there. Okay, so go to the next one, and so and it was always sort of like that, which I don't mind. It was something that we were brought up around being like. So yeah, we got sent to A Squadron. So I was under the care of, I think it's Charlie was there, Charlie Bryce, and I think Bernie was still the commanding officer at the time, who had a huge amount of respect for.
Yeah.
Big burly white guy from the South Island, hard as nails, Southern man, but really quiet, caring sort of bloke, but still, still expected $1 million out every day from you. The expectations were always there, which was good. And typically you get handed the broom for the team shed, and then you get handed the tea urn. That's your job. And you get. I guess some guys have questions around what it actually all means. And it's about doing those. If they can do small jobs, then they can trust you with the big jobs. And not a lot of people, get to understand that. And some get real, get territorial about it. And I'm above this and all that sort of thing. But you're actually not. Around your setting, you're not too big or small for. Every job's an important job, and don't leave that job unfinished. Don't walk past it. That was a real sharing shed mentality, and
Yeah.
I embraced it. We didn't ask to get told to do things; you just go and do it. Yeah, so we're on tea and sweeping duty for a good year, like everybody else,
Yeah.
before you do the handover ceremony. But really enjoyed the black roll. I thought that was something that I was born to do. The crash and bash, the MOE, and
Yeah.
getting in and into the rooms with your mate, trying to be the best soldier you can, and mastering the disciplines. And I think it's when I watched my uncles shear sheep and that, they were trying to master their craft. And so, the weapon handling and all the other sort of disciplines around the black roll was something I really, really loved and enjoyed.
Awesome. And so that side of things, with your time in the squadron, you I then guess reach a point. You get to a point where you decide to leave the unit after. So like you said, you've reached the peak of this mountain, and you're constantly evolving and constantly striving to become better, be the best version of yourself for your team, for your mates, and all that sort of stuff. And then, because you're still only young, I think it's 25, 26 years of age when you decide to then transition out and move on to do other things. Is that right? To rugby?
Yeah, So I did two terms with the black roll, 2 terms with the green roll. You know, went to Malaysia, went to Africa, did the usual Aussie islands, and there wasn't any wars on the horizon. And you know, it's always that itch, that rugby itch to scratch. And I really loved rugby for a range of reasons. One, you know, because that was the only sport we were allowed to play as Māori on the river. You weren't allowed to play any other sport.
Why was
you
that,
know, that was
Chris? What was that all about?
because none of our family played any other sport. They were rugby buffs through and through.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Would you have
rugby
been
league, you're not
cast
playing
out?
soccer, you're not playing cricket.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
mate,
was
you
going to
would
say,
have been
would you have been cast out if you...
ostracised out of the community, out of the region. It's like, you know, so we grew up around rugby, watching the All Blacks. Really, you know, getting up early in the morning. You know, so it was something really passionate our family members were about. So yeah, I spoke to the boss at the time, and he said, "Oh, when you come back from Africa, well, we're going to promote you. Unless there's sort of war on the horizon, what's the use of hanging around?" And I watched many others before me, as you'll know, that some guys who never actually ever got to war, but they maintained bastions for the organisation. You know, and we're really grateful for those guys that, despite not committing to any skirmish to test those skills, they still had to play in preserving, you know, the value sets of the organisation. And you know, I can't speak of them highly enough for doing that, for making that personal sacrifice to us, because I guess that when I went to the likes of Iraq, and I guess maybe the same for those that went to Afghanistan, wearing the badge, where those disciplines shone through, and without them, you know, life would be a bit more difficult, I'm sure. But yeah, I sort of at 25, I thought I'm going to pursue this rugby career. And I think Bosnia was kicking off at the time, so guys were heading over there, and I wasn't part of that group. I think they were like either 6-month stints or whatever, but they're only sort of peacekeeping roles.
Peacekeeping roles, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, and I obviously wasn't on the short list. Just like, okay, I'm gone. So I ended up buying a gym out at West Auckland, and then pursuing this rugby dream.
Yeah.
Obviously never got very far, so.
How far did you get, if you don't mind me asking? Like, where did you get to in that, with regards to, and why did you stop? Was it injury? Was it not selected? What was that all about?
Yeah, so I ended up going to a local club just down the road from. There wasn't a lot of Māori in Kumeroa or Hōpai at the time. I think it might have been, you can count them on one hand, and so we started dragging all these other brown skin faces to the area through the gym and through rugby. You know, all my mates. Yeah. I think Mike Riwi ended up playing for us as well, so I dragged him over. He was a fantastic rugby player, really, really super talented. You know, in our view, could have gone a long way. So we started off with QBU. We're really shit outfit. Both of the 15s, you know, just because our player base wasn't huge, and you know, and so we're trying to recruit every Tom, Dick and Harry over to the club, and we give them like free membership in my gym just so we could build the player base. All the usual tricks. We did manage to build a fairly good 7-side, so much so that we got 3 New Zealand guys. Mana Ashford, who's a cousin of mine, and then Muji Valance was another kid that ended up making it through our team. Those guys probably would have made it without us. But what we tried to do was probably very similar to the unit, is create, you know, a training base where we would apply the Hemi Williams approach to them. Death by physical exertion. You know, we just got them like really super fit. But one of the things that I really found in Civilian Street, that there are very few people that had a really strong mind and to be really disciplined around how you could, you know, beat something or beat someone.
Yeah.
And it took us a few years, but I think in our first tournament we rolled, teams like Teachers Eastern. They were like top of the sevens table
Wow.
across the region. And I
Yeah.
think that gave them motivation. And so part of our build-up that we used to have was our club team used to play provincial sides. So we played Auckland and we played North Harbour often.
Yeah.
And we played North Harbour one time. They were going down to it, and they had the likes of Ron Cribb, Troy Flavel, and Buck Shelford was their coach.
Far out. Yeah. Yeah.
And our little club team rolled them
Is that
10
right?
0. So 10 tries to nothing. We
Far
we
out.
we whipped them, and I could see this. I could see their mind start to think. Actually, I think I'm really good at this. I've beaten some of these named
Yeah.
North Harbour, bordering on All Black players. I think I've got the ability to push on, and these are the types of things that we're trying to get them to think about. Is that
Yeah.
the obstacles are in within that grey matter,
Yeah.
and if we could build a training platform, develop a team and a culture, fundamentally around drinking, unfortunately, that mirrored the organisation, the group,
Yeah.
then we've got a really good fighting chance of beating some sides. And we've ended up becoming a big threat in the Seventh Circuit. There was, watch out for this community team. And we were a bunch of no-names, that were
Wow.
just like-minded, that enjoyed each
Yeah.
other's company, but they could play. So we
Yeah.
recruited really hard to get these kids and start to build a sort of layer of succession and start to build capability. And when those three guys made the New Zealand team, we said to them, don't forget your sense of duty back to the squad. Your job now is to help other young guys get through and to give back to the organisation. So we sort of started that part of it. But coming back to this sort of pursuing the rugby career, I probably North Harbour Sevens trials and then made the North Harbour Mildies, but didn't get any further than that.
Yeah. Right.
I think my poor drinking habits and bad discipline probably got in the way. Or I just have to accept the fact I just wasn't good enough.
Nah, man. Well, thanks for sharing that. And that's awesome. Like, even to go through that and do the trials and then be there, but to have that mindset. I love how you've spoken about that. To have that mindset to go, well, I can relate. There's, acknowledging the comments that you mentioned earlier about some of those that have served in the unit and for whatever reason might not have had that opportunity to head away and to put the skills that they've developed and have to the test in the actual environment, but the foundations that they laid and that they have set have enabled generations to come after to be able to benefit and reap from those. So yeah, echo the comments that you've just shared. The rugby side of things and that mindset, coming back to that, just that desire and the attitude and mindset, because it is a huge thing obviously here in New Zealand, but to have you go and actually put it out there and put it on the line and go and do that is a testament to the stuff that we'll get to later in this conversation about the businesses that you're involved in, and I'm really keen to hear about your mindset and approach about that, so we'll get to that. So I really appreciate you sort of painting a picture, and it's leading nicely in terms of you sharing your experiences and stories so far. So on here, Chris, I wanted to ask you, the gym, you created the gym, and this is where you've met your sweetheart, right?
Yeah, shortly after I sold it. So I was in that sort of transition phase. Okay, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So I ended up doing Outward Bound to get a reset.
Yeah, right.
And then partway through, I was like, what am I doing here? It's like, but it was a good time just to get away from Auckland, to do something relatively foreign and common, I guess, at the same time. Finding myself again before the next stage of life.
Yeah.
So I met my wife and ended up shortly after having our firstborn, who's now 21.
Awesome. Okay, are you all right? Have I dropped out or something?
No, you're still good.
All right. So had your firstborn, who's now 21, and so sorry, how many children do you and your wife have?
We've got three. So 21. He's a boy, or man now, 16-year-old boy who's at Auckland Grammar. Both of them went to Grammar. And then our daughter, who's 15, she's at. And what people ask us, because we live on the shore,
Yeah.
but we're from Wanganui, why are you sending your kids to central Auckland to go to school?
Yeah.
And I always sort of admired those big schools for lots of reasons: tradition, standards.
Yeah.
Boys at boys schools, girls at girls schools. Just a range of skill sets they bring up. But just the fact that they can rub shoulders with families that we wouldn't ordinarily mix and mingle with from time to time. They're really nice people. So some of them from that school go on to be leading academics, politicians, environmentally, a range of highly disciplined folk. And I thought, well, and given the best chance at life to schools that we don't ordinarily.
Beautiful.
It's not to say that any other schools are any different.
Yeah.
But at the time we just thought it was a good move for us to make. And we really like the old traditional ways of those schools. I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess I'm old-fashioned in that regard around being on time, being respectful, being accountable, being as transparent as you can, and just being a really good person. So those sorts of schools probably live and extend our family values anyway.
Yeah.
So it was something that we thought it was really important that they go to. And even when we show up to these schools, we meet some really super wealthy, but just really genuinely nice. And so are their kids. And so that was something that really resonated with us quite often. Is they champion winners and they want kids to be the best version of themselves, but also be. So that's what we really like about the schools. So they're off over there.
Beautiful. That's awesome. And sorry, I forgot to ask, how long did you hold the gym? Why did you sell the gym in the first place?
So I did about 4 years, and I guess I could see the rugby dream sort of fading away. And I guess, when you live and breathe the gym 7 days a week, it's a bit of a grind. And I think I had the skills at that time to up the business model.
Right.
Gyms are a hard graft, but I think for us, we were around setting the tone around the environment, so making it enjoyable, family-like, and looking after people whilst they're in your presence. Treating them like royalty. So they always felt the need that they could come into a place and feel special, and didn't care if they didn't want to train or they come here just to socialise. That didn't really matter for us. It was around making sure that they felt welcome when they walked through that door.
Nice.
And that they were, a family, I guess, a family of even more gym blokes and people. But then we sort of went into the community, and we got a guy called Paul. From that time, he was huge, 125 kilos. We had Garth the Silver there.
Wow, the boxer.
Yeah, the boxer. And so we ended up sponsoring a whole heap of high-end sports people and celebrities.
Yeah. Right.
To draw, to make it just not where they can rub shoulders with these, I don't know, perceived rich and famous. So there's other sort of things. And the young fellas really liked Paul Kingy, because he's really disciplined around his training, and young guys really warmed to him, and they could share information. So, but along with that, it became really tiring, and I got sort of burnt out to some extent, which is not healthy in lots of ways. So it was sort of that time to sort of hang the gym boots up, and try and do something relatively new.
Yeah, right.
So I sort of moved on from that.
Awesome. And I wanted to come back. How did you meet your wife, your sweetheart? How did that come about?
Through my brother-in-law. Just an off chance he was trying to hook us up, and one thing led to another.
Nice.
Yeah, and so she's been there ever since for us all the way through this journey.
Love at first sight.
Oh, it was for her, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
No, yeah, she's a real soft, caring sort of person who basically was the counterbalance for. And it was being to be fair, been a rock for our family all the way through. She's been awesome.
Beautiful, awesome. And so there's that. You've gone through these, and I haven't got to it yet, but I want to come to it now. And now you're, or maybe not. I was going to jump to you're now working in the private security sector, but what happened? Was there anything that happened prior to that? So the selling of the gym, you're doing something else for a little bit of time, and then obviously stuff kicks off with regards to an opportunity, I guess, to go over and work in the circuit. Was there something that happened before that, or was it pretty much the selling of the gym, a brief hiatus, so to speak, and then into the circuit?
Yeah, I was in the ended up working as a court security officer of all things
Right.
in Auckland District Central,
Yep.
and then ended up recruiting Māori for university at AUT for a short period. So I guess it was about a 2-year sort of window.
Yeah.
And I didn't find them particularly satisfying, for the, it was ambitious, I guess.
Yeah.
But I didn't find those things sort of fulfilling. Um, Kicked off, and I think 50 of us signed up straight away under Blue Thomas,
Right.
who openly departed Hereford to seek out to get ex-New Zealand SF guys involved with the Iraq War.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a wonderful opportunity because it was, people that I'd shared time with, that I respected time for. And then sort of Iraq started to evolve, working in the British Foreign Office for about 6 months.
Wow.
So it was a unique opportunity.
Yeah.
But when we got there, we got split up because I were conscious around the sort of Kiwi mafia, I think they called it, not to get any groundswell or so I ended up with Maddie and another Kiwi, a couple of Kiwis actually,
Yeah.
under a Welsh guy, which was interesting. And they had some disciplines, but not to the standard that we'd been really used to.
Used to.
And they had some characteristics that we didn't really think were conducive to being a relatively tight-knit unit in a war environment.
Yeah.
And although the ICF had gone in there and dismantled Saddam and the Ba'ath Party, things were relatively peaceful until April 2004, I think, when Blackwater got hit twice, both in Fallujah and also along. But they were doing things contra to normal operating standards, so they were bound to get spanked by the locals. They disbanded a million population from the army. There was no revenue generated, and so they up in arms and started this insurgency, and the insurgency basically morphed into this sort of full-blown civil war. And then on the other side of that, you had the Shia militia that were going at it. This sort of political tension that rose, trying to create a stable environment with 3 ethnic groups that basically didn't like each other, including the Kurds who were further to the north, controlled by Talabani and Barzani. And it just turned really quickly, really nasty. And I remember in probably 2008, there was something like 3,500 deaths per month.
Yeah.
Which is astronomical, but that was a reflection of the environment. So you had insurgents from right across the region in one country just going at it, and the middle of it was this sort of military infrastructure, which was resource, as you might know, through KBR and Dick Cheney and his men. And then you had the security group, 25,000 contractors trying to make.
It was really destructive. In the middle of that, we were trying to keep ourselves alive.
and keeping our clients safe, which was fundamentally your job, right? And getting paid pretty well
Yeah,
for it.
that's right.
But I remember,
And
really complex setting, much more complex than I'd ever imagined a war to be.
yeah,
And I remember some guys that had done that 20-year term who had never seen war, who had an itch to scratch, who were there and going, well, this is what it's all about. It's pretty uncompromising.
yeah, absolutely. And how long were you doing that for, Chris? Like once so from 2004, for how long period of time were you doing that? How many years?
I think I was in Iraq for close to 10 for a decade.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
So
yeah,
month on, month off.
yeah.
The money was really good, but I think if I think about it, it probably had some really adverse effects on both my mental health and physical health. So much so I didn't recognise it at the time.
Yeah,
And I think those things sort of crept up on me. And although there was a strong desire to support family and bring the wonderful things that come with getting paid well, but I think at the other end, I think mental health and that and physical health, well, not so much the physical health, started to wane. And you come from an SF background, you think, oh yeah, I can actually deal with lots of things, complex things, and you're trying to be the best person you can be for your, because beyond that they've got families and kids and that to feed, right? So you have a sense of duty to make sure that you do things properly and do things right. Read the intelligence, interpret it in a way where you're not going to get caught on the crossfire, or nor you're going to be in positions where you're going to compromise your mission. So there's always sort of all those sorts of things waning. And I think where I saw the tipping point of the war to say, well, actually, my no relevance here, is when I watched an Abraham tank get IED'd.
yeah, right.
It was like, okay. And so it sort of really sunk in. If that's what an IE, there's nothing I can or deliver on that's going to help reduce that particular risk.
Yeah,
And then it sort of really sunk in, holy crap, this is actually a real war that be difficult to win. And there's
100%.
lots of other motivators I can't control.
Yeah,
And I guess many guys that have been to combat that stuff can really resonate.
yeah,
And it's not until you get some of your mates killed you realise, holy shit, these are sort of life and death situations. People are playing for keeps, and you can probably understand their motivations for wanting to bring foreigners harm in that setting,
yeah,
protect the things that they really care for and love. And you're this foreign force trying to impose your will onto a community that actually doesn't want it. And so it's all those sorts of mechanisms sitting in the background you always try and consider and think about. And I always remember speaking to the locals, because we brought them on quite a bit. Because Western intelligence is really good at crunching numbers, but actually when you get the hearts and minds stuff, when you start to speak to communities of people that live in those areas, they bring a really rich layer of intel. It's whether or not you have that high trust model to validate and to trust that that intelligence means something for you in the way where it might preserve lives that you're responsible for, not only your clients but your teammates. So we found that really useful. So they become part of our families, and I always remember I used to say to them, we apologise from climbing in through the window. We normally try and come through the front door. And that really resonated with them. It was like, yeah, okay. And we always sort of say, being Māori and being colonised previously, we understand the hurt and pain that this thing brings.
yeah,
So we're really empathetic and caring towards, the natives of that country. Your own is really important, because that sort of helps reduce risk. It helps. I remember a SF team showed up at our compound one time looking for one of the drivers, and it was like, oh, is so-and-so Ahmed here? And said, yeah, he is. What are you asking? Because they're all sort of tooled up with their tight shirts on, with their big cannons hanging out, the bandana that's pulled really tight. They've got the shooting glasses, got the chewing tobacco,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And real sort of bravado, like with no sense of humility at all, showing up, beating the gate down. It's like, we want to see so and so. It was like, okay, so what do you want to see him for? Oh, he's been part of a terrorist group. So, well, you'll need to produce evidence before he leaves this compound. He said, oh, well, we've got 10 guys with Humvees, and we're just going to still. Oh, good luck. So but it was like, hold on, we're the leading nation in this war. We should be able to just walk into any compound and demand what we want. So, not on this compound, mate. You won't be getting jack shit unless you ask nicely. So anyway, so he produced this paperwork which indicated that he was in line for questioning, and so they took him away. And the next rotation, we found out from his brother that he'd been conducting about 12 operations at night time against the security forces. And we said to him, well, okay, so why didn't he conduct them against us? He said, of course, you guys treated them like family. He didn't think there was a need to you treated them like your own. So, that was a real sort of Kiwi way in which, we're known to be like.
Yeah.
And it really resonated with the locals, so much so that you don't become a target.
Yeah. And
which is always nice.
Yeah, definitely, eh? But that's so cool to hear you. I'm so really pleased, Chris, to hear you speak about those aspects and that particular aspect, but also just backtracking a bit when you were identifying, and I'm wondering if you could speak a bit more about it as well, the mental health aspect. Obviously, I think for all of us, the physical side of things starts to wane in many ways, but listening to you speak, it's obvious that there's been involved in a heck of a lot of situations and stuff there, particularly over that period of time. And so from a mental health perspective, what have been some of the things that you've needed to try to overcome, whether that be personally or whether that be through assisting and helping out the guys, and or maybe there's been girls as well that have been on your team, I'm not sure. Looking at some of the photos, I recognize some of the faces of Darren Triplow and GT, Tefero, and some of those guys. But that mental health space or brain health space, whatever you want to call it, what were the things that you found were impacting you? How did you overcome those? And have you had the opportunity, or have you been able to help out some of the others, which I imagine you would have as well from your time?
Because when you see death and destruction around you, you soon begin to think, well, what relativity does that have for me?
Yeah.
And is it luck or good management? And maybe maybe I was good in my previous life that my time hadn't been clocked early. But, it sort of always dwelled in your mind is that at any given time, is try as best you can to control the environment around you. And if it does mean onboarding local, nearly give you the time of day, then so be it, because that might down the road play out to be in your favour. And I think being Māori really does help. Just having you have this sort of skill sets that can bring mayhem and destruction.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, that's inside the caring for fellow humanity. And I think what distinguishes, particularly with a unit, is that when you get pushed to the edge and there are vulnerable people that need protection, that we don't mind stepping into that breach. We don't mind to be called upon to put yourself in harm's way to deliver the game. And I guess that's being part of it, but that you are thinking that this death and destruction that might come calling one day weighs on your mind often, like a decade and a half or 15 years being in those environments. It does sort of It does resonate in the back of your grey matter.
Yeah.
And you try and, because I remember leaving Baghdad to go to Al Fatah, and it was like, well, if you want to go up the chain, you'll have to go to these other environments and improve your value. And I thought, well, fair enough. And I remember going to Al Fatah. It was in the Sunni Triangle up at Beiji, and it's where the main Sunni insurgents were. We had 40 odd Fijians who were up for scraps every day, as you can imagine. They don't mind. They don't mind getting amongst it. We had a whole heap of Brits and Kiwis, 40 odd, and we had to secure the fifth most strategic, important location in Iraq, which was the Kirkuk oil fields, and the main pipeline that ran through there through Al Fatah connected up to Beiji, and then that was part of the export of 1.7 million barrels a day. So it actually kept the country afloat. There was strategic. It was like, okay, so you're the guy that's protecting the East Bank rather, with your little team, and any shit that comes down, you're going to have to deal with it. And I remember, training becomes, from the unit anyway, becomes really critical as your backbone to, when the shit hits the fan, rely on your training to get you the muscle. So we did copious amounts of training around IA drill, how to defend the compound, what roles and functions did we have. And I remember practicing it all the time with the boys. Gave them a sense of pride, gave them a sense of comfort too, that we'll be there for each other if the east or south. And I remember the other bank being slightly jealous that we were sort of operating in this sort of way, but it was like, I've got all these families and all these boys that are relying on me to be the leader in the thing. So and then
Down it's Southern Iraq.
GT was in an incident where they got whacked. He was really lucky he didn't get killed. But I was sort of in the ops room now. I'd got off the coalface, and so there was a degree of relief. But the tension and the responsibility to look at, and you couldn't do nothing, right? You were stuck in an ops room. You actually weren't at the coalface if the shit at the fan. You're actually in an ops room where your role and function changed quite a bit. How do you deploy assets? Well, fundamentally, you go back to training to incident management yourself, so you could help reduce that risk of becoming a target of insurgency. And then the other part is, okay, so how do we bring a QRF into bear to weigh down on the effort? But the different styles across the country in terms of insurgency were quite different. So some people effectively formed projectiles, and others used other forms of attack. So you always had to adjust your model. But coming back to your question, is that it was a compounding thing. I think when I left Iraq, it was like this huge sense of relief.
Yeah, right.
I didn't have to do that anymore, and people didn't have to rely on me to. And it's a big responsibility, an important responsibility, but I got tired. I got mentally tired. So leaving and having some time off before going to Pakistan was valuable, hugely valuable.
Did you find, and did your sweetheart speak with you? Were you bringing some of that stuff, because over a decade is a long period of time to be doing that and carrying that weight and having that responsibility constantly? Because I would imagine even when you're not in country on the month off, you're still thinking of the team that's there, the people that are there. Has the handover that I've provided to the oncoming person that's replacing you, is that correct? Is it accurate? Is it effective? Is it all this other stuff? Did you find that filtering into your relationship, either with your darling, with your wife, or with your children, in negative ways? And if you did, how did you combat that or overcome that?
Yeah, I think it did. My wife said, particularly foxes around, if there were firecrackers and stuff going off, if I was asleep, she said I would twitch profusely. as if I'd gotten a fright, or needed to get up and do something or whatever.
Yeah.
And I sort of noticed that my dealing with some situations that got heated, I was probably a little bit over the top.
Yeah.
Probably a good 3 to 4 years, and I didn't notice it at the time. And it must have been really awkward to deal with for others, but it's not until I looked back and reflected on it. Actually, I was a bit of an idiot dealing with those sort of minor issues, in different sort of ways. And I guess I'm thinking about it now. I'm slightly embarrassed
Yeah, well,
about it.
I think we all, like, I know I have been, but what did you, for you, did you do counseling, or has it just been something that you've just learnt over time, and maybe your wife has just been kind enough to be patient like my one has with me and all that sort of stuff? Or did you seek further help or speak with people or reach out?
Yeah, I think I seeked help, which was really valuable for me. So there's probably some really cool underlying things that I hadn't picked up early,
Yeah,
that probably played through into my adult life.
right.
And then sort of getting that support where needed was quite critical. But my wife was probably really forgiving in lots of ways, which I come back to, um, you know, being the thing that's enabled me to heal.
Yeah.
And I found that going home, and also because I hunt a lot, particularly with my kids,
Mhm.
The bush is the
is the most peaceful setting that I enjoy. Chasing animals, and I don't have to get them to have a sense of satisfaction either.
Yeah.
Just the pursuit of doing something different that doesn't clog my mind. It's good the animals don't shoot back.
Yeah, that is true.
But I find walking the hills, being in the bush, being in the environment with no white noise alone is really good. Is a good way to be centered and relaxed, and think about
Nice.
life in different sorts of ways. And I think it's been for me a good healing.
Beautiful, man. Thanks for sharing that. And I know that so some of the feedback that we've received through these experiences and people like yourself that have been able to share so far has just been the insights that individuals have gained through people like you and your experiences, and the help that they've felt. And everybody, what I've enjoyed is that people are hearing and receiving the messages that they need to receive at that particular time in that particular way, even though somebody else is receiving it differently from the same person. And that's been a beautiful thing, and we've been really grateful for that. So again, just a quick acknowledgement there for that, Chris. I wanted to jump into, if it's all right with you, into you. From my perspective, you appear to be very, very successful. Like, and I'll speak to that in terms of some examples, in terms of being able to have your children in those types of schools, rubbing shoulders with people in those environments, families, good people, as you mentioned, good value sets, and all those types of things. But also with the businesses that you are now a part of and have created. And I was wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking about the businesses that you're involved in, and obviously you're on a number of boards and stuff as well. And it's clear through the information, and even just through hearing you speak, that there's an overwhelming sense of duty and care and support and responsibility that you try to put across in everything that you do. So these boards and stuff that you're a part of, as an example, the companies that you have, and the positioning around the work that you deliver. Um, would you mind, because it's been challenging. We've had some people on here that have gone on to create some really good businesses and that sort of thing, and they're still going. And then we've also had the opposite, where there's been people like myself and others that have just really struggled with transitioning out of a place, of a unit like that, and not finding any satisfaction, no matter what the other job, really good jobs, but just not to the same level of satisfaction as what's been experienced. But you seem to be somebody, from my view, outwardly looking in, that seems to be doing really, really well in this space. And I'd really love it if you could share what those businesses are, coming back to the question, and how those things developed for you.
Well, let's just say it's all smoke and mirrors. I left Pakistan thinking there's some really cool skill sets they can offload onto the commercial world.
Right.
And I didn't anticipate that New Zealand is quite a way behind in terms of international security best practice.
Mm.
And it doesn't come without its challenges within the environment, egos, and just the willingness to want to change and be better. And I guess our expectations of them are somewhat different than their own expectations of themselves. And I find that really difficult for people not to comprehend or understand. And, for the life of me, you bat your head up against walls. And it's like, no, I know I'm right, and I'm going to prove to you that I am. And you try not to bulldoze them, but, subtly guide them in an area that think we can open their minds a little bit to change. And I think that's been healthy. But I think this New Zealand security sector has done a great job up to a point of about 20 change since 1997, which is a real reflection of the controlling interest within the sector. So I guess my job, much like Caddy's and many others, is going to try and dispel what the industry might, one, be perceived at, but two, how we conduct ourselves properly within it. So there's been a constant nudge to push the industry into thinking bigger and better. And I'm not talking
best practice. And then, sorry, it's my son doing the dishes.
and then
All good.
And then the sort of government's role and function is that outside of New Zealand shorelines, the actual world's changed dynamically, and you would know this better than anyone else, being in the likes of Afghanistan, where there's some cruel people that want to do other humans harm. And so how do we one, understand what that target profile looks like? What are their capabilities, and what sort of harm or risk are we exposed to if we don't intervene? And so, geopolitical wars, think of the tension between the West, Iran, Russia, and Chinese. Sort of peace operating, and you can see that now that tension is starting to emerge in some countries. So Africa is obviously another place here, the South China Sea, Ukraine, the tension on the Iranians about nuclear weapons, and all these sort of geopolitical things that are happening around us. You've got climate change, food security, water security. You see transnational crime now starting to go through the roof. The drug distribution in the country is now $1 billion, and that doesn't come by mistake. It's all orchestrated, and so you think about the harm that brings to our vulnerable communities and the people that live. You and I probably are arm reach away from families that are hugely affected. And I see the likes of terrorism now. So 2 events in the last 3 years. One from a right-wing extremist, and the other one from religious makeup. So it's all. And I don't think both the public and the security sector and then the state agencies have actually addressed it in a meaningful way. So 2008, I was fortunate to be a part of a security managers conference or national security conference where we had all the agencies in one room and plus ourselves a handful of security providers. And I was really lucky enough to be in that conversation. But I was really alarmed and concerned that charged with the responsibility of protecting the nation that led ministries, DPMC, SIS, and the like.
Wow.
Just in my mind, was quite off the mark, and it just didn't sit well with me at the time. And I remember making a bit of a song and dance about it anyway. And I guess that might have infuriated a few others that you're challenging roles and functions and doing those properly. And within the security sector, they were focusing mainly on CCTV integration and manpower. And I was like, hold on, I've got guys like Joe and many others that have got these rich skills that have come from these really complex environments that you can actually swing into play and deliver some relief if you allow them some space to do that. And I guess part of coming back to your question is creating that environment where our boys are able to be themselves, to deliver on things they're really, really good at if they want to do that.
Awesome.
I think that's the other part, right, is that not all guys want to go back into security. They've just spent their whole lives there. And why would they go and do something that's, it may have created some distress or some, whatever. So knowing too that we had a sense of duty to provide an opportunity if it exists and the boys want it, that they can step into that fold, do all those things they're really good at unhindered, and let them go at it. So I guess so we've created global risk consulting to high-end security space. We use international best practice to help get clients to understand. We use technology now, intelligence to help get us there. Crisis management system, which is built off a military model. Using cryptanalysis, all those other sort of wonderful things. And we basically just step them through, using technology, step them through those things.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's, fundamentally where we were at. And there's a range of boards back home that we're part of, just to give back to it.
Yeah.
And do some other stuff,
And so those boards, and that's awesome to hear that. I love how there's an opportunity with regards to global risk consulting and what you've created. But I mean, opportunity for people that might still want to apply their skill sets and the experiences that they have, but also the reasons, more importantly, the reasons behind why that drive and that desire has been there to create that. So that's awesome, Chris. And then the boards, because the boards with regards to that you're a part of, are you able to speak about some of those? And obviously the New Zealand Māori rugby one is something that would be close to home for you and being a part of that and your keen interest and all that sort of thing. But some of these other ones, the Māori River Tourism Organisation, the Horizons Regional Council, those sorts of things. What are these boards or groups about, and why are these important to you? Could you speak about that as well?
Yeah, the Whanganui River is something that we've been brought up as kids. It's been the centre of our universe. It's now formally recognised as its own person. So the relationship between people, can never go challenged. We have an inherent connection to our spiritual awa, as we do with, Tangaroa, the Ngahere, the bush rather, the mountain. Important to Māori, we have a really deep connection too. So the awa is for us is, traditionally if people say where you're from or from the river, well, people automatically know that we're from Whanganui. So we've been brought up, since we're little to say, well, that's our saying, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au, I am the river and the river is me. So that formally got recognised, and I was lucky to be there on the board at that time when it got the. And it was a real profound moment, because I remember all the things that had been drummed into me as a kid. My grandmother, all those people that had passed, that always talked about, the river being the centre of our universe, which was finally recognised and enshrined in law as a person that needed protection, that you couldn't abuse, you couldn't pollute, it had the same rights as anyone else. Was rather profound. Awesome. There's so much now it's universally, some countries are going to adopt it to protect the environment. Water is life, right? And so that we're the first native nation in the world to have that enshrined in law. So, and so the Whanganui tourism, coming back to the question, the Whanganui tourism thing is around, so we've got this wonderful river and we've got these really rich Māori stories is that how do we bring those to life? And I was in Pakistan, 2013, I think it was. I met a couple of people there during touch game, and ordinary, you sort of ask where you're from and that. So, I'm from Coromandel, and the other person, I'm from Auckland, and they said, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Wanganui." I went, "Oh, that place." And I remember it had really bad press, because this colonisation thing has been going on for 100.
Yeah.
We've been ostracised by not only politicians but by the media, and the community, Pākehā community, bought into that, and so we grew up in a sort of racial sort of setting, and so that sort of really resonated at that time. It's like, okay, so what do I do to go about changing that? So I joined, and the opportunity came up to join the Wanganui Māori Tourism Board, and as well as I do. They have these wonderful traits that can't be matched anywhere else in the world. They're very kind, caring, loving, treat you like royalty when they're in your company, do anything for you, and that I grew up with, with what these people were saying about us. And so, I've set about bringing some of that love and caring for people, and the things that, because I know that those are the things that where others try and define us, we can define ourselves through our actions and the things that we do from day to day. So that's been part of my role and function with the Wanganui Māori River Trust organisation, is helping to bring that to life.
Yeah.
And so had some government funding now that our Māori institutions, the river, and our operators, who what they call cultural navigators, and they take you for a cultural experience up and down the river.
Yep.
But they tell the same story as the legislation, is that the river is life. And then tourists get to see and touch our culture. It dilutes that perception that media and previous politicians and the like and Pākehā community have about us. And so that's been, it'll be a lifelong journey now to change that perception forever. That isn't our reality. And so, And then the other one is around the Horizons group. So during the 2015 and 17 floods, our people got no love from the local and regional council during those floods. We weren't considered as being a group worth saving or having a connection to. So over the last few years, we've gone about just establishing those settings and creating new ones. So we've written a strategic document now that sets the tone around Māori principles, or whakapono, manaakitanga, kotahitanga, kaitiakitanga, all of those sort of things that you and I
Beautiful.
live and breathe. So they are the foundations of which the civil defence now respond to. And so much now, so it's been adopted by all the mayors across the region, adopted by the coordinated executive group, and then sort of last month we had a conversation with all the EMOs. So what is your relationship with Māori, and how do you, build a flourishing relationship where, and their role and function is to provide care and protection for all. And we're not interested in any understanding they may have about our people. They have a duty under their role to preserve life, protect assets. So how do they afford those things when they show up every day? So it's getting them to be accountable without being forceful.
Yeah.
And again, I always say, you have a duty of care, like I do, and like you have done for when you're done on the SAS Bureau, is you have a clear line of distinction around what your role and function is, and we want people to be really, accountable to those roles. Not in a forceful way. We sort of hold their hand all the way through it.
Yeah.
And then we say to them too that we've inherited this really poor treaty relationship, and it's not your fault, and it's okay that you don't know about these things, and that our people don't bite, or they will if you don't comply, or
Yeah.
a proper conversation with them as opposed to getting dictated to. How people just don't respond to that sort of shit. So we're about creating the new setting of how that's going, and it's the same with the role I've got with the National Iwi Chairs, is around creating a treaty relationship beyond just these normal pastime settings. Is that under the Treaty of Waitangi, there is co-ownership, co-design, and so we're dialogue. We're not going to be spoken to anymore.
Yeah.
We're not going to tolerate that sort of behaviour. We're at the table together, co-designing and empowering our communities to embrace this new treaty relationship. So that's, I guess, to some extent, and they're not easy conversations, right?
Yeah, doesn't sound like it. Yeah.
But they're worthwhile.
Yeah.
I guess it's the same as when you're with the unit, as you leave the organisation in a better place than what you found it. And if it means healthy tension, if it makes people feel uncomfortable, then so be it. Otherwise, we expect a rollover on anything, and that's not leadership. And I'm not saying that I'm a leader. I'm just saying that that's just the way I'm being geared, and being 50 years old at times. So you got to do something while we're here.
Man, that's awesome. Well, you're certainly doing that, Chris. I really appreciate you touching on, and I get that's only a brief, glimpse into the mahi that's working in the background, on the forefront, by not only yourself but the people that you'll likely have involved in those processes. But it's a beautiful thing to hear, to dispel some of those myths around that, to make clear some of the expectations that are inherently ours. It's not that we shouldn't be needing to try to fight for these things. Those things have always been inherently ours, and that of the people in those areas. But to have people like yourself in the corner, doing those things and doing the work to try to bring that to light, and have those people that need to be responsible. Those are not easy. I could imagine not easy conversations, not easy situations to be in, but grateful that we've got people like you that are striving to do that and continuing to do that, Chris. So any support and stuff that we can sort of help steer towards that way, we're grateful to be able to play a very small part. But loving the work that you're doing, and I guess I didn't touch on and wanted to go back to Pakistan. You've mentioned it a couple of times now, and I've seen it in my notes here, and I've forgotten, I've neglected to go to it. What was happening there in Pakistan? How long were you there for? What was the story there?
So I ended up writing, unbeknownst to me, I wrote the global standards for Chinese National Patrol standards. We embedded those in. Yeah, I don't think you realise it. Well, yeah. So Chinese National Patrolling Company never had any really weak on a range of things. It wasn't their sort of area of expertise. But what Schlumberger did, and BP, because they were the host company, they'd just been spanked in Mexico when they had that big oil leak.
Right.
And so they went back to health and safety policy here, and security had a large role to play in that. So they revamped the whole structure around health and safety, because I think 21 people died on that route. And I guess they were going to get pulled into court, which is going to cost them 130 billion or something like that. It was like, okay, so that's a hiding we don't want to go back to again. So they had this partnership with Chinese National Petroleum Company and SOC, or Southern Oil Company. Basically, a guy who'd known us from the control risk group said, "Oh, we've got this big job coming over it with Arden Security, with Chinese National Petroleum Company, AN." I was like, okay, so what are you offering? Well, better rates and better conditions. Well, we got stiff there, but we went over, and as sure as the day comes up, we went about and said, "Well, where's the standards?" I said, "Oh, we don't have any. You've got to write them."
Wow.
So basically, we 12 weeks rewriting all of the SOPs in the security operating system. And what had happened is we given it to the boss, Mr. Lee, who was an awesome guy. He said, "Thanks very much, Chris." And so they took it to BP, and it got signed off straight away.
Wow.
And so that got us on the radar really quick. There were some subtle changes we had to make within the standards.
Yeah.
I remember like 12 weeks going hard out, just just writing everything. Documents from all of the other jobs I've been in, and try to centralise a single path of delivering this mission, and then wrote those standards, and then gave it to the boss, and they said, "Yep, well done, you've won the $30 million contract." And they said, "By the way, there's 7 other Chinese companies coming in. You'll probably get that work." It was like, okay. Typically, with those sort of contracts, right, they need to be contested by law. Reassurance that the way in which we were operating, which was on a shoestring, and they're delivering the security model, they were like chuffed. He said, if they can do this on an oily rag, imagine what they can do with all this resource. So we ended up securing 3 contracts like back to back off that work. And what we ended up doing is recruiting all of our ex-unit guys to be in leadership roles, to, shared values, shared experiences, and we didn't have to train them. They knew the expectations, right? Cut from the same cloth. Brilliant. And so they just backfilled into these roles. We set the standards. They drove the standards into the ground. And BP, it was like, man, you guys are like, no, we're just doing things the way we normally. But coming back to your question, so when I left Iraq, there's a guy called Tef, who was up in the UK. He was a security advisor. So he said, "Oh, do you want to come to Pakistan?" I said, "Yeah, cool." So he said, ended up with control risk again. We ended up going up there, and because I'd done 10 years plus with them, I was really sort of known person. Delivering some complex tasks, and so I was really lucky to get another crack at.
Awesome.
So they sent me into Pakistan, and I was in a shit state. And he said, "Okay, I want you to deliver these standards." And I looked at him and go, "Oh, okay." He goes, "Are you familiar with them?" I said, "Because we wrote them." And so it was just sort of plain old territory. And so I spent 2 years there and loved it.
Yeah.
In a local rugby club called the Gins, Islamabad, full of locals. I just showed up on them, my mountain bike and my shorts. Showing up. "Any rugby going on?" "So where are you from? What's your name?" And ended up joining a local club, going down there doing rugby training. And then we ended up dragging all the expats down to play some games. We ended up inviting the local club into the British Foreign Office, and they set up the first ever women's rugby match ever in history. And it was when Malala was shot by the Taliban 2 years before. She'd become the centerpiece for Hillary Clinton, around human rights and education and access to the global movement. And on the back end of that, I met this Aussie bird in Aussie. She goes, "Chris, we're really keen we're loving what you're doing with the rugby and that, and connecting our communities a little bit better. Because there's a sort of social element, that sort of morphs into the work, trying to connect them both through sport." And they said, "We want to try and set up a rugby match with our expat girls, the United Nations, with the locals." And the British Foreign Office did this big, huge push, put heaps of money into it. And so the men played, the Pakistan rugby team ended up playing the United Nations team. I had to ref. It was crack up. It was like the World Cup. And then shortly after that, they had the women's match. And then they sort of had prize giving, and I thought it was a really profound moment in time. I was really lucky to be a part of this life-changing opportunity.
Did you ref the women's one as well?
I think I did. Yeah. And so the UN girls were familiar with touch, but much so they were sort of touches and pushing them over, and it got a little bit heated. And we got the UN girl, the girls from the. We were obviously a bit annoyed around the touch ferocity, and it's like, they've never played before.
Cut them some slack.
Cut them some slack. The first time, they've got a lot at stake. It's their home nation. And I said, just enjoy the moment. So we ended up doing that, and so that was one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of.
Sounds like it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a couple of years there, and involved in that, and managed to get all of that together as well, the rugby.
Yeah, yeah, and we try to. Yeah, rugby was one of those things that was probably similar to hunting. You know, we
Yeah,
just cut away from work and a few drinks down at the British club, catch up with all the Brits and the Americans and whatnot, and talk shop, talk rugby, all the rest of it. So it was sort of my time away from the office, but
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Beautiful, man. And what about, so with that, with global risk consulting and everything, all the great work that you're doing, it's so awesome to hear the successes and the growth and the ongoing development of which you're achieving with regards to the businesses and companies that you're part of and the people that you're no doubt connected with. What is next for you? What's on the horizon? What do you see? What's the plan for the next? It might be hard with this pandemic, right? Might just be 12 months at a time, sort of thing, or 6 months or 3 months. But do you look ahead, and have you got a plan of where you see yourself in the next 5, 10 years, Chris?
Yeah, we again have a strong sense of duty to our ex-badge members. Like I said, they've got things that no other has, and so we'd like to create an environment where they can just plug in and deliver things that they're really good at within the sector. The sector right though to receive that quality of people and that quality of operator. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. And trying to clear the way with people that who know that people like you exist and undermine them, but actually show that there's a unique and different doing things that might be better outcomes, and making them feel that they shouldn't be scared to embrace it either. Is that they should look to use it as a personal growth opportunity. The settings for that, and then I guess technology has been probably one of the enlightening moments for me. Is that how do we take the things that are in, which is very limited too, by the way, Joe, in my head, onto technology systems, and how do we bring about relief for people that might be suffering or about to suffer using technology. So we've got a national security intelligence platform now. It's got about 1.5 million data sets sitting in it.
Wow.
And what it does, it just shows us where our key criminality pieces are across the country. So it sort of guides people to think about. It's no different than us collecting intelligence from the ground, doing OPs, but in a more technology vision.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to ground truth that data. So when people make decisions, they're making it based on information, evidence-based information. And so we're building a natural disaster system for Māori. So that's with TPK and LINS. So hoping to go live next year with that. We're hoping to put that data system free in the hands of our people, so they don't have to pay for it, and we don't have to go knocking on doors for government agencies for data. We've done quite a bit of the heavy lifting, and we're potentially signing up CRIs or Crown Research Institutes now to access volcanology data, Met Service data, NIWA data, and then we're having conversations with NEMA, National Emergency Management Agency, around how that might help them with their role, but also how that might connect with the community. So the piece that they use to outline what they're trying to achieve is locally led, regionally, nationally supported. So we're using that system, and you look at an intelligence platform, you go, right, where do enemy bring my greatest pain and why? Hazard plus exposure plus vulnerability equals consequence, right? It's the same with the military model. Where are the bad guys, and what are they going to do to me if I don't respect them enough? And so when we look at a natural disaster threat, we say, okay, so how big is it, and how severe will it be, and who are the communities that are going to be impacted? So we use that through technology, and we would hope that those that are using that technology can do self-help without us and with us. That's
awesome
bit of work we're doing.
Beautiful, man. That's great to hear. There's before I take some time to just sort of acknowledge this conversation and the work that you're doing, Chris. I was just wondering, what advice would you, because there's a whole bunch of stuff, I've just been scribbling down notes, advice and tips that I'm taking away just from your conversations around not only the military stuff, but also the work that you've just touched on now and the plans going forward. But because we're about wanting to try to help create a better future, one person at a time, one experience or story at a time, and extend that out to families, to communities, etc. And everybody's going to take the information and hopefully use it in ways that are meaningful for them, that are going to help not only themselves but others. It'd be really great to hear what would be some of your thoughts or advice, whether it be directly to ex badge members that may be struggling, whether it's not badge members at all, just civilians or whatever walk of life or frame of life they're in at this stage of life they're in at this time. What would be some words of advice that you would give, encouragement, positivity, however you want to frame it, to help people be mindful of either what they're capable of, what they might want to do to create a better future? What advice would you give to people that are looking to take that step but maybe unsure, and or to people that are confident but who maybe they might be a little bit too confident? Those sorts of things. What sort of advice would you give to people? And I just want to give you that time now to go through and share whatever advice that you would like to give, and maybe it's advice that you wish you might have received 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, I think staying connected to like-minded folk and your peers is critical. I think staying connected and regular is really important for your well-being and pulse checking on your mates, right? I mean, we do it when we're with the unit, and so why would it be any different when you're outside the organisation? Is pick up the phone, go and see them, have coffee. I see posts now with Hoki and some of the visitors that he's had lately, and so that should be a normal course of action that we do. I've recently picked up the phone and had met that we served with back in our cycle, and it's been really refreshing. We can go back to those places, have a few laughs, and talk about family things and other things that might be difficult to have conversations around. And the conversation lands where the conversation lands, right? You're not trying to steer it in a particular way, but you still have a sense of duty to your peers despite not being in the organisation. And of course, even for those that have not, even for those that you haven't served with, but come through the same system, don't know them or whatever. It's about being a good human being to others around you, and displaying good traits, good habit. And I don't always get it right. In fact, my wife tells me I get it wrong often. Being grumpy and around expectations, and I don't know. I get short fuse now if people aren't behaving in a particular way, and I guess I get on getting worse with age. But I remember touching base with a guy up in Thailand when I saw him less than 10 years ago, and we picked up where we left off, and he still had those idiosyncrasies that you really respected and the ones that really annoyed the hell out of but that no one else knew of what those idiosyncrasies were or are other than yourselves, and I think that's the unique piece out of all of that, is that you get to know people's vulnerabilities, and I've got many, as well as their wonderful strengths, and you always think about, man, you're a great operator in this particular setting doing these sorts of things, and that's what I really cherish, is that no one else knows it about that person other than you, right? Because you've been in environments where no one else has seen it, been subjected to, and people ask me, oh, what's that guy like? I said, well, he'll give you the shirt off his back and he'll put his life in front. If harm comes your way, those are the sorts of people. I guess creating groups, getting together often. I think we try to create a sporting environment, both rugby, golf, and what was the other one? Golf and darts.
Darts, yeah, right.
We try to get all the boys back to the unit to connect both with the current generation of serving members, old boys.
Yeah.
The first game we had was Danny Mead, no, Danny Wilson, rather. He was like Vietnam era. And so he was a ref back in the old days who, all of us respected. There was like
Yeah,
legendary sort of Ernie Stead sort of brand and Bill Lillycrap. And I remember showing him up, real humble, quiet, unassuming guys. Like, yeah, that's the Danny. We know that's the guy that everyone tries to mirror.
Mm.
And I remember him coming over and speaking to everyone. He goes, right, I've only got 2 rules. 1, don't swear at me, and 2, don't pick anyone on the ground. Other than that, that's all on this rugby.
Oh, please, that's awesome.
And I remember all of us just rolling around with laughter, because and it just set the tone about who we are and what we're all about.
Yeah.
You can respectfully win, but at the end of the day, we're still mates.
Yeah.
And then we go into the shed and have a few beers, and then tell a few stories, a few lies, and the whole place will be roaring, just like the old days. And then we go in and have a feed and whatnot. So I guess it's recreating those opportunities often, where we get together and get to know one another, particularly the generations where I might not know the young fellas and vice versa, they might not know me, but making a connection which might lead on to something else. If we've got some employment opportunities, we have a duty, a bit like Vertical Horizons, where they soak up a lot of the boys and give them something on and do and be around their mates. And so I guess it's just a wonderful example of what we're trying to do in the security setting.
Beautiful. Awesome, man. Thank you very much, Chris. I want to take a few moments here just to acknowledge you. And I know that it's not something that's comfortable for people like yourself that have had so many experiences, and it comes through even when you're speaking. There's a great deal of humility that comes through when you speak, and with regards to the achievements that you've been able to do and the things that you're continually striving for in terms of creating that environment for people, whether they be ex-badge members or to serve people in meaningful ways just in general. So really pleased the humility part comes through in spades as I listen to you speak. So grateful to be able to have connected with you. I've heard your name for many years, but never ever had the opportunity to meet you in person until now. And I can see why people have spoken so highly of you, not just the Neil Wakas of the world, but other members whose names I won't mention on here who have served in the unit that have mentioned your name. And I can understand and see why now, spending some time with you and listening to the things that you've spoken about. Some of the stuff that I've heard and that's connected with me and listening to you speak is that overwhelming sense of duty and work ethic, uncompromising work ethic to work hard for what it is that you want, but also be humble enough to accept change. These are just things that I've been filtering as I've been listening to you speak. Whether or not those are the things that other people hear is yet to be determined, but these are the things that have really resonated by me. Every job's important, regardless of what that job is, and don't just walk past it. Great advice that for me, that stuff's all still relevant now and would have been great to hear even 10, 15, 20 years ago for myself in terms of those things. And I know that people today will resonate and connect with that. Grateful to hear about one of the things that stands out is when you spoke about the limitations and how they're more sort of contained within the grey matter, and that's so true as well. And just having that understanding that in order to grow and develop, for me, this is some of the takeaways that I've taken away from what you've been sharing. I need to put myself, and we need to put ourselves in uncomfortable positions, outside our comfort zones, and be willing to ask the questions, potentially dumb questions, to people either like yourselves or people with more experience than us in those areas, so that we can develop and improve and grow. And if we carry on holding on to our previous status, whatever that may have been, thinking that we're this and we're that, and really out in the real world we're not those things, we're going to be stuck. And I know that those have been things that have sort of held me back. So being able to connect with people like you, with your experience, not only helps me, but I'm grateful that it's been helping our listeners take away the experiences from people like yourself and apply them in their own lives. So, Chris, I just want to again acknowledge you and thank you, brother, for your not only your time today and giving of your time away from your family. I know we're getting close to Christmas, but also for sharing so openly and raw and honest the experiences that you've had. And this again only scratches the surface, and wish you nothing but the best with Global Risk Consulting, with all the fantastic work that you're doing there. And we know that it's going to continue to bless and fulfill and touch the lives of those that you are continuing to work with, mate. And just really grateful that we've had this opportunity to connect, and much love to you and your family, and have a safe and Merry Christmas and an even better 2022 with all the work and stuff that's coming up and beyond, mate. So thank you very much for being here with us today. And yeah, and I know Brian would say the same thing as well, but he's not here with us, so he misses out. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, awesome. I don't know how to take on that kind language, bro. I guess it's uncomfortable for all of us Māori to hear, another male speak to another male like that. It's not something I've been brought up with, or nor are used to. I still think there's lots of work to be done. There's still things to do for others. There's only a finite time on this earth to be able to achieve that. But yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share. I'm only a phone call and email away for anyone, and you don't have to be an ex-serving badge member to reach out and ask, have a conversation, have a brew, have a catch up. We still have a strong sense of duty to that is around us. So thanks, Joe. I think you're doing a fantastic job here with bringing something. I guess it is encouraging for others just to step up to the mark and share their stories, their wonderful insights, both good and bad, the warts and all. Life's not easy, nor is it designed to be like that either. Otherwise, we'd all be billionaires sitting on Bahama Beach with lots of children doing nothing, and that is not the case. But know too that there are people out there that do care about others, and that we're always there for people.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Chris. And as always, respectfully, we sign off with Who Dares Wins.